I want you to tell me the difference between these two videos.
I'm Spencer Cox, Republican Governor of Utah.
And I'm Jared Polis, Democratic Governor of Colorado.
And we're here to help save your family dinners.
Stick around.
Okay, that was a very easy question. In fact, you're probably wondering what these videos had in common at all. The answer is simpler than you might think. All four men that you just watched in those clips had held the position of governor of one of our 50 United States. In fact, if you kept watching that second one for just a few seconds more, you would have seen a man who tried for that very same position and failed. This is the bizarre story of how three actors from the 80s action movie classic Predator all ended up running for the top job in their respective states. Let's start with the most well-known of these stories, Arnold Schwarzenegger's 2003 run to lead California. To give some background, in 2003, Governor Gray Davis was massively unpopular. After a series of economic scandals and just generally poor leadership, a petition to remove him as governor reached the required number of signatures to head to a general election. Controversially, Davis's lieutenant governor, Cruz Bustamante, hopped in the race as well, serving as the main, if not only, Democrat. However, it's completely possible that his candidacy led to the recall actually passing, as many people ended up preferring him to Davis and voted for him when they probably wouldn't have otherwise. Due to how recall elections in California work, regardless of if these people voted Democrat or Republican, because the vote advanced, Schwarzenegger was automatically elected as he received the most votes as the replacement candidate for Davis. What's interesting about his entire time is despite his unconventional background, you could not possibly get a more conventional politician. Schwarzenegger served about as moderately as you could, basically just towing the line and taking whatever positions were most popular amongst Californians. A fascinating example of him breaking the standard party line for Republicans was his stance on climate change, taking extremely strong action in favor of environmentalist policies. This ended up also being one of the core pillars of his 2006 campaign for re-election. Heading into that race, Schwarzenegger was already still quite popular, but California is a monumentally Democratic state, and 2006 is just one of the bluest years ever. Wyoming and Oklahoma elected Democrat governors those years. But in an incredibly impressive victory, not only did Schwarzenegger win the race, he won by like an enormous margin. This man came within 2 percentage points of flipping Marin County. You know, one of the most famous Democrat strongholds of the entire country voted 80% for Kamala? Actually, scratch, that's not even the most insane. This guy won not just the county of Sacramento, he won the city. The literal center of government, a place that just 2 years prior voted for John Kerry by an over 30% margin and ended up backing the governor. The victory was just an insane overperformance by every possible margin. This is the most competitive that any county has been in the state for decades. The rest of Arnold's time in office was kind of similar to how it was before. Very unremarkable. He was popular, he did a few things, and kept a low profile. It is insane that this would be seen as revolutionary and the most impressive thing a governor had ever done in California, like just 20 years later. I think this is part of why his time in office is just so forgotten. It's insane to me that people just never talk about his time leading the Golden State. The only time it comes up is to talk about the fact that we don't ever talk about it. I mean, I was born in California when this guy was in office, and it's as if this period of time has just been erased from the state's history. Even if Schwarzenegger had a bigger personality, it didn't show up in the way he governed. The same cannot be said for our next candidate, Jesse Ventura of Minnesota.
Let me ask you something. How much studying have you actually done of 9/11?
It is undeniable that Ventura's time as governor was way more memorable for his state than Schwarzenegger's was for California. Elected in an extremely narrow three-way race in 1998 as a candidate for the Reform Party, Ventura marks the only statewide victory in that party's history. Even the election alone here is more notable. Not only did he win in an upset, not a single poll prior to voting night even had him in second place. He was admittedly a little bit controversial at the time, but almost every divisive stance that he took is aged just flawlessly. If someone ran today on these policies, they would be the most popular politician in the country. Ventura was like 20 years ahead of the curve on gay rights, expansion of public transportation, and legal marijuana. Nobody was really taking these stances at the time. It was genuinely just him. Now you might be wondering, how did he get to this point? What drove Jesse Ventura, a complete outsider, running on very ahead of his time ideas to run for such an office? Well, it all started in 1990 when Ventura was inspired by a high school teacher to run for mayor of his hometown, Brooklyn, Park, Minnesota. He won easily, but what's most of note here is that he was still actively a professional wrestler while running the town. Keep in mind, he was also still actively an actor too then. In 1998, a few years out of office for mayor, Ventura relaunched his campaign, this time for governor, running as a very unique candidate with a huge grassroots campaign. He was able to become nominated for the Reform Party, and narrowly squeezed out a victory and a massive poll upset. Even if some of his ideas were a little bit out there for the time, he was quite popular as governor, and was a pretty early sign of things to come for the much more populist direction that American politics has gone in since the 2000s. This man was a giant, powerful wrestler with an appearance most would not think of as conventional for politics, and he stood up for people most figures in government wouldn't even consider thinking about at the time. He actually had ambition that very few would have the guts to pursue. I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that this man is probably one of the most interesting governors that we've had this century. He is such an anomaly in every way, but it worked out fantastically. No matter how out there and wacky he was, it was in a way that people loved. Ventura was tired of politics by 2002 and ended up deciding not to run for a second term, which even though I probably would have loved to see what he did in that time, it was totally an understandable choice after 4 years of constant publicity and pressure. I think this is overall quite a positive story. I cannot say the same for our third candidate, Sonny Landham. Landham spent like 10 years just trying to get any seat of power in his home state, Kentucky. He did not come close to winning even a single one of these races, often dropping out embarrassed months before the deadline. In 2003, he launched his first gubernatorial run, explicitly seeking to emulate the success of his co-stars. He never found it, withdrawing, and then trying to pull an Andrew Cuomo and running as an independent, with very little success. His main platform was about reform in family courts, which he stated benefited lawyers more than the families themselves. He specifically aimed to shoot down a new law which protected the system in the state. However, and this is a huge however, I am not convinced he was in this for good reasons. Do you want to know why I think this way? Sonny Landham was convicted of making threatening phone calls to his family. Even if he eventually appealed it up to reversal, this was still why he was so sour about the court. I mean, he says it was because of personal experience. I wonder how he ended up there. He eventually tried to run again for state senate, and then eventually United States Senate with the goal of taking on Mitch McConnell. Unfortunately, I don't even think God can do that second one, so obviously he didn't succeed there. You might be noticing that I have a lot less positive thoughts on Sonny Landham compared to the prior two people. Allow me to share why. It was in the 2008 run for Senate which Landham showed his true beliefs. Let's read out a quote of his from the campaign trail.
I call for outright bombing them back into the sand until they surrender, and if they don't surrender, then you continue the war. Because if you don't, you will never have peace in the United States. Now do you want peace in the United States, or do you want to live to some utopian ideals that are impossible in a world?
Yet somehow it got even worse. He said several other racial slurs about Arabs in the same interview. You can probably glean from this that Landham was running on an extremely conservative platform, calling for a doubling down on the hawkish foreign policy of the time. The social conservatism was a big theme in his candidacies. The problem is it's really hard to sell yourself as a family values conservative. But when you began your career as a porn star, not even third parties wanted to do anything with Landham by the end of these ordeals. The Libertarian Party explicitly requested that he withdraw his candidacy, saying that he was making them look bad. Which, oh my god, just to end this off, imagine being shunned away by a party that let this guy on the debate stage.
The government requires licenses to get married. They require a license to drive. What's next? Requiring a license to make toast in your own damn toaster? Absolutely not.